Hello and welcome to yet another video on AI Pulse presented by your mentor Vivek. Here is a small story about homework. On the 2nd of August this year, the European AI Office's enforcement powers over general purpose AI models came into force. And there is one obligation in that law that is unusually easy to check because it is a document. Under Article 53, a provider of a general purpose model has to publish a summary of what the model was trained on. Now, one quick clarification because we covered a different article on this channel a few months ago. Article 50 is about labeling AI generated content. This is Article 53, and it is about disclosing your training data. Different obligation, different people affected. And the interesting thing that just happened is that somebody actually went and graded the homework. The assessment comes from the AI Accountability Lab at Trinity College Dublin, published at the ACM Conference on Fairness, Accountability and Transparency this year by Dick Blankvoort, Harshvardhan Pandit, and Maximilian Gans. They built a framework that scores each published summary on transparency and on usefulness. And then they scored the summaries. 44 summaries scored so far. The grades run from A plus down to F on two separate axes: how transparent the document is and how useful it actually is to somebody trying to use the information. And the most common grade on both axes sits in the C range: not failing, not good. The word I would use is compliant-ish. But the number that actually matters is a different one. 19 models where the required summary is not late, not vague. It is simply not there. And the individual grades are worth saying out loud. At the top of the table is Apertus from the Swiss AI initiative, A to A+, a publicly funded open model beating everybody. Brea AI's image models also score well. At the bottom, Microsoft's 5.4 model gets a D to an F. And in the middle, in the C to D plus band, you will find Anthropic's Claude models and Meta's Muse models. I want to be very direct about that last one. This video is narrated by an AI voice, and the model I use most is Claude. It scores C to D plus on this assessment. I am not going to soften that because the entire point of this segment is that the number is the number regardless of who it embarrasses. So why is almost everybody landing on a C? The researchers named 3 problems, and none of them is really about effort. The first is format. There is a mandatory template, and providers split into 2 camps. One camp fills in the boxes. That is Google, Meta, Microsoft, OpenAI, and a number of the open labs. The other camp replaces the boxes with a paragraph of prose. That camp includes Anthropic, Mistral, and XAI. And the flavor of it is a sentence like a proprietary mix of publicly available information and licensed data. Now, is that false? No. Is it a summary of the training data? Also no. It is a sentence that has the shape of an answer. The second and third are vagueness and incompleteness, and they go together. The template asks real questions. Where did the data come from? Was it scraped or licensed or synthetic? How was it curated? What did you do about bias? How did you handle copyright? A C-grade answer names those categories and tells you almost nothing you could verify. And that is why the transparency score and the usefulness score are separate axes in this framework, which I think is the smartest thing about it. You can publish a document that is technically transparent and practically useless, and the grading catches that. Now, the part where I tell you what this does not prove, because there are three things here I do not want you to overread. First, the powers came into force on the 2nd of August, and as of the reporting I have seen from early August, there were no confirmed fines and no formal investigations opened. The theoretical ceiling is 15 million euros or 3% of global turnover, whichever is bigger. But please do not read zero fines as everybody is fine. It means the regulator has had the power for a matter of weeks. And the Commission has said it will not be doing content level audits itself. It acts on complaints and on alerts from an independent scientific panel. So, the enforcement here depends on somebody outside the regulator doing the noticing. Second, these grades come from one research group's framework. It is peer-reviewed, it was presented at a serious conference, and they have published their data and their code, which is more than most people do. But it is still one methodology, and a different framework would produce a different table, and it is a live assessment. More summaries are being scored as I speak. So treat every figure here as being true on the day I recorded it. And third, a finding I would file under things that should surprise nobody and disappoint everybody. Providers who signed the voluntary code of practice scored only marginally higher than those who did not. And the reporting on it says that small advantage came almost entirely from documentation aimed at deployers rather than from the training data disclosure itself. So signing the voluntary pledge correlated with better paperwork elsewhere and barely moved the thing the pledge was about. So why does a compliance document matter to somebody who just wants to build things? Because you inherit it. If you build a product on top of somebody's model, then the question of what that model was trained on is not an abstract policy question. It is the question your legal team asks, or your enterprise customer asks in their security review, or a procurement firm asks in writing. And if the provider's own summary is a paragraph of prose that says proprietary mix, then you cannot answer that question either. You are passing the vagueness downstream to your own customer. And here is the genuinely encouraging part, which I do not want to get lost under the criticism. The A grades exist. Apertus, from a publicly funded Swiss initiative, cleared the bar comfortably. So this is not a case of a regulator demanding something impossible and everybody failing honestly. The standard is achievable. It has been achieved. It was achieved by an organization with a small fraction of the resources of the company sitting in the C-band. That tells you the gap is about willingness, not capability. So that is where it stands. 44 summaries graded, most of them mediocre. 19 models where the required document does not exist at all, and 0 fines so far. The law has arrived, the grading has arrived, and the enforcement has not yet. I will come back to this one when the first investigation opens, because that is the moment we find out whether Article 53 has teeth or just paperwork. All my sources are on screen and linked in the description. Go and read the assessment yourself. It is public. If you found this useful, please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for patient listening, and see you in the next video. Until then, peace out.